The calendar in my kitchen showed the 6th of October, when I began to realize that I couldn't live like this anymore. 67 years seemed like plenty of time to learn to put up with loneliness. But loneliness alone together is a different story. My name is Meryl Bland, and I've lived in an old two-story house on the outskirts of Cleveland for almost 40 years. I inherited the house from my parents, and I've put my heart and soul into it. Every floorboard, every curtain holds my memories. And in that same house, I'm slowly dying of invisibility. That morning, my husband Tobias ate breakfast as usual, almost without looking at me, and retired to his office. 42 years of marriage had turned us into roommates who happened to share a bed. He had always been an emotionally stingy man, but since retiring from his job as an insurance inspector, he had become a veritable hermit in our own home. His world has narrowed down to TV, newspapers, and old insurance files that he rereads like sacred texts. I sighed and looked at the to-do list. Tonight, I needed to make dinner for the kids. Garth and Winifred had promised to stop by. My son works as a real estate professional, and every visit he makes turns into an appraisal of our house. "Mom, have you thought about my offer?" He's bound to ask. "This house is too big for you and your father. Sell it, buy a smaller apartment, and put the rest in an account. An account he'd certainly like to have access to." Winifred, his wife, looks at my antique furniture with an appraising gaze, as if she's already mentally arranging it in her living room. My daughter Joris is no better. She works as a receptionist at a dental clinic and is too busy to visit her mother regularly. When she and her husband Edric do visit, the conversation usually boils down to the fact that I have to rewrite my will to avoid unnecessary arguments afterward. As if I already had one foot in the grave. My fingers trembled and the knife slipped, leaving a small cut on my index finger. I watched the blood pool in a small drop, and I felt the pressure pain in my chest that had haunted me for the last few weeks intensify. "Tobias," I called out. "Can you come here for a minute?" Silence. Then an irritated reply. "I'm busy, Meryl. What's going on?" "My chest hurts. It's worse than yesterday." I heard heavy footsteps, and Tobias appeared in the kitchen doorway. His gray hair was disheveled, his glasses slipped down to the tip of his nose. He looked at me as if I'd interrupted him while he was solving the world's problems. "Again?" he said with undisguised irritation. "You've been complaining for a week. Take a painkiller." "I think I need to see a doctor," I said cautiously. "It's not a normal pain." "You're always in unusual pain," he sighed. "Remember last year when you were sure you had a brain tumor and it turned out to be just fatigue?" "But it's really—" "Meryl, I need to finish something. The kids will be here soon. Just take a pill." He turned and walked away. I stared after him and felt something inside me finally break. 42 years I'd put up with this neglect. 42 years I'd been invisible in my own home. An hour later, Garth and Winifred arrived. They piled into the house without knocking, as they always did. Garth, tall, balding, more like his father than I'd like to admit. Winifred, with perfect styling and a smile that didn't affect her eyes. "Mom, you look great," Garth lied, barely glancing at me. "What's for dinner?" "Casserole in the oven," I answered, trying to smile despite the growing pain in my chest. "Oh, by the way," Winifred perked up. "We were at a furniture show the other day. I saw a sideboard just like yours. Do you know how much it's worth now?" I knew what she was getting at. My grandmother's antique sideboard had been the envy of her for years. Soon Joris and Edric arrived. My daughter is petite, with premature gray hair and perpetually tired eyes. Edric was a silent man with the keen eye of an accountant, though he worked as a computer programmer. "Mom," Joris gave me a quick hug. "Have you lost weight? Are you not sleeping well?" It was the closest thing to concern I could hope for. "A little sick," I answered. "I've been having chest pains the last few days." "Oh, that's age," she dismissed it. "You're always in pain. Remember last year when you thought you had cancer?" Exactly the same words as Tobias. They didn't hear me. None of them did. At dinner, the conversation, as usual, was about everything but me. Garth talked about his new lucrative deal. Joris complained about her bosses. Tobias ate in silence, nodding occasionally. I sat at the head of the table, surrounded by my family, and felt completely alone. "By the way," Garth said suddenly. Winnie and I are thinking about going to the Bahamas next month, a week at the beach. Joris and Edric want to come along too. Oh, how wonderful, I said, feeling the pain in my chest grow sharper. And we thought maybe you, Dad, could come with us too, Garth continued, turning to Tobias. My husband perked up, showing interest for the first time all evening. You know, I'd like to go. How long has it been since I've been to the sea? 10 years? 15, I said quietly. Our last trip was 15 years ago. No one paid attention to my words. They continued discussing the hotel, the excursions, the restaurants, not a word about how I was doing. The thought of being alone for a week made me nervous. What about me? I finally decided to ask. Am I going too? There was an awkward silence in the room. Mom, Joris began gently, flying is hard on you. Remember how your back hurt last time? And then you say you have heart problems. That doesn't mean I'm an invalid, I objected, feeling a lump in my throat. Of course not, Garth agreed quickly. But you say you're not feeling well. Maybe you should stay home, get some rest. You like quiet. Silence, not loneliness, I whispered, but I didn't seem to be heard again. Stop it, Meryl, Tobias said irritably. They're right, you'd better stay. Someone has to look after the house. Stop messing up the kids' plans. I froze with my fork in my hand. Just like that. Stop messing up the kids' plans. It's like I'm a cranky child, not a woman who has devoted her entire life to this family. After dinner, as I was picking up the dishes, I heard Garth and Tobias talking in the living room. Maybe we should hire a sitter for Mom, my son suggested. She's been complaining too much about her health lately. Come on, she can handle it, Tobias said. She's always exaggerating. Nancy's neighbor can check on her a couple of times a day. Then it's settled, Garth said with relief. Reservations for everyone but Mom. I put my hands in the hot water, feeling the tears stinging my eyes. The pain in my chest was almost unbearable, but I didn't want to call Tobias again. It would be useless. I'd better find the pills myself. I was heading for the stairs when black spots swam before my eyes. I staggered and grabbed the railing, trying to steady myself. Tobias, I called out in a weak voice. He came out of the living room and saw me holding my heart. I'm sick, I whispered. Help me, please. Tobias moved closer reluctantly, as if performing an unpleasant duty. Are you being dramatic again, Meryl? He said with a weary sigh. The children are still here. I started, but the pain pierced my chest again. Call an ambulance, please. Tobias stared at me for a few seconds. Then he shook his head. Lie down. It'll be easier in the morning, he said, and turned and walked back to the kids without even giving me a hand. I slid down the wall, feeling my left arm go numb. The sounds of conversation and laughter came from the living room as if from another reality. They were planning a vacation while I struggled with the pain. Gathering the last of my strength, I crawled to the nightstand where I kept the emergency button, a small device I'd bought last year against Tobias's wishes, who thought it was a waste of money. I pressed the button, and when I heard the dispatcher's voice, I whispered, Help! Heart attack. The last thing I saw before I passed out was Tobias's figure in the doorway. He was looking at me, but he didn't move. There was no concern or worry in his gaze, only annoyance at yet another inconvenience I was causing him. The white ceiling, the beeping of the machines, the smell of medication. These sensations slowly seeped into my consciousness, crowding out the darkness. I tried to move, but my body felt alien, heavy as lead. My mouth felt dry, and I felt a dull, aching pain in my chest. Mrs. Bland, can you hear me? The voice was young, female, with a note of professional concern. I struggled to open my eyelids. A nurse in her 30s, her brown hair in a tight bun, was leaning over me. Where am I? I wheezed, not recognizing my own voice. You're in the emergency room at Cleveland Metropolitan Hospital. You had a heart attack. Do you remember anything? The memories came back in bits and pieces. Chest pain, a numb arm, Tobias looking at me and not moving, the emergency button. An ambulance, I whispered. I called an ambulance. Yes, and just in time. The nurse nodded, checking the monitor. If I hadn't gotten help in time, it could have ended much worse. Dr. Ames will be here shortly to explain everything to you. In the meantime, Rest. I nodded weakly, feeling the fatigue creeping back in. The room was quiet, only the instruments beeping. The dull light of the fall day shone through the ajar blinds. October in Cleveland is not a happy time. Tobias, the kids. I wondered if they knew where I was, if they were worried, or relieved that my dramatization finally got a concrete diagnosis. I don't know how long I slept, but when I woke up again, there was a middle-aged man in a white coat standing in the room. Dr. Ames, probably. "How are we feeling, Mrs. Bland?" He smiled, leafing through something on a clipboard. "We feel like a truck-crushed raccoon," I thought, but I said it out loud. "Better. What happened to me?" "Myocardial infarction," the doctor said. "Not a major one, but still serious. You're lucky you got help quickly. Have you had any symptoms before? Chest pain? Shortness of breath? Unexplained fatigue?" "Yes, in recent weeks," I admitted. "I told my family, but they didn't take you seriously?" The doctor nodded understandingly. "Unfortunately, it's a common story, especially in women your age. The symptoms of a heart attack are often mistaken for anxiety or simply written off as age-related." He sat down on the chair next to my bed and began to explain what I would be facing. A few days in the ICU, then transferred to a regular room, medications to be taken, activity restrictions after discharge. "Do you have someone to help you at home for the first time?" he asked at the end. "The first weeks after discharge are critical to recovery." "Husband, kids," I answered automatically, even though I knew inside that I couldn't expect them to help. "Good," the doctor nodded, not noticing my doubts. "I'll talk to them about your condition and the care you need." After he left, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. A heart attack. At 67, it's not unexpected. But why do I feel so bitter? Probably because deep down, I had hoped that when something really serious happened, my family would still care. That their indifference was just a reaction to what they saw as my petty complaints. I now had an official diagnosis. Would they believe me now? They showed up toward evening, all of them together, as if in concert. Tobias went in first, followed by Garth and Joris and their spouses. Their faces were anxious, but it was obvious to me, who had known them all my life, that it was more a social mask than a genuine feeling. "Meryl," Tobias stomped awkwardly over to the bed, hesitant to sit up. "How are you?" "Alive," I answered. "The doctor said it was a heart attack." "Yeah, they told us," Garth nodded, glancing at his sister. "It could have been worse." I wanted to ask how it could have been worse, but I didn't. "We were worried, Mom," Joris said, but I couldn't hear the worry in her voice. They sat around my bed like an uncomfortable dinner party. The conversation didn't flow. They asked superficial questions, and I gave equally superficial answers. No one mentioned that I'd warned about heart problems. No one apologized for not taking my complaints seriously. After 15 minutes of awkward pauses, Winifred was the first to glance at her watch. "We have to go soon," she said, speaking more to Garth than to me. "Yes, we have a lot to do," my son nodded. "Mom, do you need anything? Should I bring something from home?" "A robe, a toothbrush, a comb," I said. "A cell phone would be nice too." "Okay, I'll bring it tomorrow," he promised. They started to pack, and then I heard Edric ask Tobias quietly, "Do you think this will affect our plans?" "What plans?" I asked, even though I already had an idea. They faltered. Joris threw an irritated glance at her husband. "We were going to the Bahamas in 3 days, remember?" Tobias finally said. "But now, of course, things have changed." I could hear the disappointment in his voice. "No, no," I hastened to assure them. "Don't cancel the trip because of me." "But who will take care of you after you're discharged?" Joris asked. "The doctor said you can't be alone. Maybe we should hire a nurse," Garth suggested, and I saw them all cheer up at the idea. "Dr. Ames said I'd be here for at least another week," I said. "I'll probably be home by the time you get back." "A week in the hospital would cost a fortune," Tobias frowned. "We have insurance," I reminded him. "With a high deductible," he countered. I sighed. Even at a time like this, he's thinking about money. "Anyway, I'll be fine," I said. "Don't cancel your vacation." They looked at each other with ill-concealed relief. "Well, if you're sure," Garth began. I'm absolutely sure, I replied, feeling strangely bitter. I knew they were going anyway. I just saved them the trouble of making excuses. They left a few minutes later, promising to come back tomorrow. I was left alone, listening to the beeping of the heart monitor. The next day they did come, but not all together. Garth dropped by first, bringing his things, but he left quickly, citing an important meeting with a client. Then Joris came with Edric, and they stayed a little longer, but again the conversation was not going well. Tobias showed up in the late afternoon, when I was beginning to think he wouldn't come at all. Are you packing? I asked, noticing that he'd come straight from the road in his jacket. Yeah, a lot to do before I left, he nodded. How are you? The doctor says I'm stable, I replied. They'll be moving me to a regular room soon. That's good. Tobias nodded absently. He was obviously thinking about something else. Listen, Meryl, he began after a pause. Are you sure we can go? The kids are worried about you being alone. Are the kids worried or are you worried? I asked bluntly. Tobias hesitated. Well, everyone worries. Look, I said, trying to keep my voice calm and rational. I'm going to need help after I'm discharged. That's true. But I won't be out for another week. You'll be back by then. What if they do? Then I'll get my neighbor Nancy to help out for a couple of days. Or we could hire a nurse like Garth suggested. Tobias nodded, clearly relieved by my words. Good. I'll leave you the money for a sitter, just in case. We were silent. Strangely, this silence was the most sincere moment between us in years. No pretended questions about my well-being, no false assurances of concern. Tobias, I began, deciding to be blunt. Would you cancel the trip if I asked you to? He didn't answer for a long time, staring out the window at the fall Cleveland skyline. I don't know, he said finally. This trip, I really need it, Meryl. I'm tired of the routine, the cold, of... He didn't finish, but I understood the unspoken word. From you, your illnesses, from your needs. I see, I nodded. Then go, I'll manage. Thank you, he said, and something like gratitude flashed in his eyes. The first sincere emotion in the whole conversation. He left half an hour later, promising to stop by again before he left. But I knew he wouldn't come. Too much to do before his long-awaited vacation. The next 2 days slowly dragged on in the ICU. My condition was improving, but Dr. Ames said he would only move me to a regular room after they left to make sure my condition was stable. The kids came in briefly, increasingly in a hurry to go about their business. No one offered to postpone the trip. No one even pretended it was a possibility. The day they left, everyone came in together. I expected to see guilty faces, but they were animated and joyful. The anticipation of vacation overshadowed all other feelings. Mom, you look much better, Joris said, even though I knew I looked terrible, pale with circles under my eyes and an IV tube in my hand. We left Nancy's roommate's phone number with the nurses, Garth said. She promised to visit you tomorrow. And I put some money on the nightstand just in case, Tobias added. In case you need a sitter or medication that insurance doesn't cover. I nodded, not trusting my voice. They'd thought of everything, how to absolve themselves of responsibility. Money instead of care. A roommate's number instead of my presence. And when I was discharged, how would I get home? I asked, even though I knew it was a dishonest question. They couldn't know my exact discharge date. A cab? Winifred suggested tentatively. Or maybe the hospital provides transportation. I could ask Nancy to meet you, Tobias said. She said she'd be willing to help. Poor Nancy. A 72-year-old widow with arthritis, whom my husband and children had assigned to be my caregiver, without even asking if she could do it. Okay, I said, resigned. When will you be back? Next Wednesday, Garth answered. The flight arrives at 6 in the evening. 6 days. 6 days when I'll be on my own after my heart attack. We'll call, Joris promised, as if she'd read my mind. And if you need anything, we can arrange for help remotely. I nodded, not believing a word of it. They left 20 minutes later, hurrying to the airport. The kisses were hurried, the hugs formal. No one looked back at the door. No one said, maybe we should stay after all. When the door closed behind them, I stared at the white hospital ceiling for a long time. Something inside me had broken completely. 42 years of marriage, 35 years of motherhood. And just like that, they'd left me in the hospital for a beach vacation. For the first time in years, I let myself think, what if it's not them? What if it's me? Maybe I let them treat me this way. Maybe all this time I could have demanded more, but I was afraid of being all alone. Loneliness. It's haunted me my whole life, even when I was surrounded by family. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid of it. Dusk was falling outside the hospital window. The lights of Cleveland glimmered in the fall fog. In that room, abandoned by everyone I loved, I felt a strange sense of freedom for the first time in years. It was as if the last thread that bound me to my old life had been severed. I had 6 days to decide what to do next. The morning after my family left, I was moved to a regular room. It was a small room for 2 people, with a window overlooking the hospital parking lot. My roommate turned out to be an older woman with graceful posture and short silver hair. She was reading a book when the orderlies rolled my bed in. "Welcome to the world of the living," she said with a smile, putting her reading aside. "My name is Delilah Grand." "Merrill Bland," I answered, trying to get comfortable in my new bed. "Heart?" she asked, nodding at my medical history, which the nurse had placed on the nightstand. "Yes, a heart attack. And you?" "Same thing just 3 weeks ago. I'm on the mend. They're discharging me tomorrow." We got to talking. Delilah was a former English literature teacher who'd retired 5 years ago. She was both direct and sensitive, with that special sense of humor that people who have had a lot of contact with children develop. "Does your family visit you?" I asked, noticing the get well cards on her nightstand. Something flashed in her eyes, a mixture of sadness and determination. "My son comes by once in a while. Daughter lives in California, calls every day. Husband. Husband doesn't visit." "Is he sick?" I asked cautiously. Delilah grinned. "He's healthy as far as I know. We're just not together anymore. I left him 3 years ago, after 47 years of marriage." I raised my eyebrows in surprise. Breaking up after so many years together seemed almost impossible. "It wasn't an easy decision," Delilah continued, noticing my surprise. "But it was necessary. You know, Meryl, some marriages don't break up not because of love, but because of habit. And habit can be a very toxic thing." Her words hit something deep inside of me. Habit. It was what had kept me close to Tobias all these years. Habit and fear of loneliness. "How did you decide?" I asked. "After the heart attack, too," Delilah smiled. "Nothing clears the mind like facing death. I was in the hospital with my husband visiting me between golf and seeing friends, and suddenly I realized, if not now, then when? How many more years would I spend feeling invisible in my own home? I remained silent, shocked at how accurately she had described my own feelings. "Did you know that the Mayans considered a heart attack a sacred event?" Delilah continued. "They believed that at that moment the heart would open, allowing a person to see the truth about their life. Perhaps there is some truth to that." We talked for several hours that day. Delilah told me how, after her divorce, she moved into a small apartment near the lake, how she started painting, a lifelong dream her husband had always dismissed, how she made new friends, joined a book club, started traveling. "Don't get me wrong," she said. "There are happy marriages that are worth saving until the end. But if the only thing you feel around your partner is emptiness or pain, then maybe it's time to think about yourself." The next 2 days flew by. My neighbor Nancy visited me, bringing me homemade pie and news from the neighborhood. I met Patricia, the nurse, who talked about her 5 grandchildren every morning as she took my blood pressure. And Dr. Reeves, who whistled the same tune from an old musical every time he entered the room. And then Harper Ziff came into my life, a young social worker with short-cropped red hair and attentive green eyes. "Mrs. Bland," she said, taking a seat at my bedside, "I'm here to discuss your homecoming. Do you have someone who can help with the care for the first while?" I faltered. "My husband and kids are away on vacation in the Bahamas. They'll be back in 4 days." Harper frowned, jotting something down in her notebook. "I see. Anybody else? Other relatives, friends?" "My neighbor said she'd stop by. But she's 72 and has arthritis." "You're going to need better help," Harper said firmly. You can't be alone after such a serious heart attack. She offered several options, from hiring a private caregiver to a short stay in a rehab center. I listened, nodding, but my thoughts were far away. I thought about Delilah's words, about my life with Tobias, about how easily my family had decided to leave me alone in the hospital. Mrs. Bland? Harper's voice brought me back to reality. What do you think? I think, uh, I think I deserve better, I said suddenly. Harper blinked in surprise, but then smiled softly. Yes, you do. We all do. After she left, I lay staring at the ceiling for a long time. Something was changing inside me, as if the ice that had long held firm had begun to crack in the spring sun. The next day, Delilah was discharged. Before she left, she gave me a big hug. Here's my number, she said, holding out a piece of paper. Call me anytime. And remember, it's never too late to start a new chapter. I was alone in the room. For the first time in days, I had time and silence to really think about my life, about my future, about what I really wanted. That evening, Harper came to see me again. She crouched on the edge of my bed, no longer as a social worker, but more like a friend. I can't stop thinking about what you said, she began. That you deserve better. Do you want to talk about it? And I told her everything. About the 42 years with Tobias, about the growing estrangement, about the kids seeing me as more of a burden than a mother, about how they'd moved away, leaving me alone in the hospital. Harper listened intently, not interrupting, only occasionally nodding or frowning. When I finished, she said thoughtfully, You know, sometimes life gives us a jolt to reconsider what we thought was immutable. Your heart attack could have been that shakeup. I've been thinking about it ever since I talked to Delilah, I admitted. What if this is my last chance to make a difference? What if I go home and everything continues as before? I'm an invisible person whose needs no one cares about. And what would you like to do? Harper asked. I took a deep breath. Leave. Start a new life. Like Delilah. That's a big step, Harper said carefully. Especially at your age and condition. I'm 67, not 97, I argued with surprising firmness. And if not now, when? We talked for another hour. Harper didn't give advice, but she asked questions that helped me clarify my own thoughts. About the practicalities of leaving, about my financial situation, about how I envisioned my life after separating from my family. The house, I said suddenly, remembering an important detail. The house we live in is technically mine alone. I inherited it from my parents 20 years ago. Tobias had always hated it that it wasn't his. That makes things a lot easier, Harper said. Yes, but I don't want to stay in this house. Too many memories. It's too big for one person. You could sell it, Harper suggested. Buy something smaller, closer to downtown, and use the rest of the money to pay for rehab and a new life. Her words were like a revelation. Of course it was. I could sell the house. A fresh start, in a new place, no shadow of the past. But how could I organize a sale while lying here? I asked. There are notaries who travel to hospitals, Harper said, and realtors who deal with urgent transactions. If you're serious, I can help you with contacts. I didn't sleep much that night. My thoughts swirled around in my head like snowflakes in a blizzard. I thought about Tobias, about the kids, about the house that had been my prison and refuge at the same time for so long, about how they would react when they came back from vacation and found that the house was gone, that I was gone. Did I feel guilty? A little. But stronger than guilt was another feeling. Determination. Determination not to be invisible anymore. Not to be someone whose needs could be neglected for a beach vacation. In the morning, I asked Patricia, the nurse, to bring me my cell phone. I dialed Harper's number. I want to do this, I said when she answered. Help me find a notary and a realtor. Events moved with incredible speed. By lunchtime, Harper came in with a sheet of paper with 3 names of notaries who work with hospital visits and 2 contacts for realtors who specialize in urgent sales. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing by helping you, she admitted. It's not exactly standard social worker advice, but I've seen too many patients who have returned to toxic relationships because of fear or inertia, and too many who regretted missed opportunities. I picked a notary's name from the list and called. A woman named Veronica agreed to come the next day. Then I contacted a realtor, an energetic young man named Dwight, who assured me that finding a buyer for a nice house in my neighborhood would be no problem. I even have a couple of clients who have been interested in your neighborhood for a long time, he said. If the price is competitive, we can close the deal very quickly. I quoted what I thought was a fair price. A little below market, I was willing to sacrifice some profit for speed. That's a great price, Dwight approved. Give me 2 days, and I'll set up a viewing for potential buyers. If anyone likes it, we'll start the paperwork right away. Veronica, the notary, arrived the next morning. She was an elegant middle-aged woman with an attentive gaze and calm movements. She explained the procedure, helped draw up a power of attorney for Dwight to do showings, and prepared all the necessary paperwork for the future transaction. Are you sure you want to sell the house without consulting your husband? She asked at one point. I'm absolutely sure, I replied. The house belongs only to me. I inherited it from my parents, and I have every right to use it as I see fit. Veronica nodded, neither approving nor disapproving, just professional understanding. In the evening, Dwight called with news that exceeded my expectations. He already had a serious buyer, ready to buy the house without even looking at it in person, just from photos and documents. It's a couple moving from Chicago, he explained. The husband got a position at the university here in Cleveland. They need to find a place to live, and your house is perfect in location and size. They're willing to pay full price if they can get it done quickly. I agreed, feeling as if fate was nudging me toward a new life. The next day, Dwight brought the preliminary sales contract. I scrutinized it, signed it, and the process was underway. That evening, I called Delilah and told her about my decision. I'm proud of you, she said. It takes tremendous courage to start over at our age. I'm scared, I admitted. Scared, and yet I feel free. For the first time in years. It's okay to be afraid, Delilah said. It's important that it doesn't paralyze you. What do you plan to do after you're discharged? I told her my plan. To use part of the money from the sale of the house to stay in a good rehabilitation center, and then buy a small, cozy apartment in a quiet area of the city. Sounds reasonable, Delilah said. You'll need time to recover physically before you can start setting up your new home. That night, falling asleep in the hospital room, I felt alive for the first time in a long time. Alive. It was as if the splinter that had been sitting in my heart for years had finally been removed and the wound could begin to heal. It took another 2 days to finalize all the details of the deal. Dwight turned out to be a real professional. He organized all the necessary inspections of the house, solved the issues with the buyer's bank, and prepared the final package of documents. On the 5th day after my family left, Veronica and Dwight came to the hospital with the final sales contract. I signed all the necessary papers. Dwight informed me that the money would be deposited into my account within 3 business days. Congratulations, Mrs. Bland, he smiled, shaking my hand. Your house is officially sold. When they left, I leaned back on the pillows, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. Relief, excitement, a slight sadness for the past, and trepidation for a future that, for the first time in years, belonged to me alone. The day of my discharge coincided with the arrival of the money from the sale of the house. Dr. Ames looked pleased as he reviewed my latest tests. You're recovering well, Mrs. Bland, but you still have a long way to go. Are you sure you're ready to live on your own? I'm not going to be on my own, I replied. I've arranged a place at the Maple Beach Rehabilitation Center. The doctor nodded approvingly. That's an excellent choice. They have a good medical staff and excellent facilities for recovery. How long are you planning on staying? 2 or 3 weeks. Then I'll look for a new place to live. He didn't ask me the reasons for my decision, for which I was grateful. He just shook my hand and wished me luck. Harper organized my move to the rehab center. She also helped with the formalities and payments for my stay there. As we said goodbye at the hospital entrance, I gave her a big hug. Thank you for everything, I said. For your understanding, for your support, for not judging me. It's my job, she smiled, to help people find a better way for themselves. I hope we'll see each other again. We will, Harper nodded. I'll stop by for a visit at Maple Beach. The rehab center was exactly what I'd hoped it would be. modern, bright, with attentive staff, and a well-thought-out recovery program. My room was on the second floor, with windows overlooking a small courtyard garden with a fountain. I had everything I needed for a comfortable life: a comfortable bed, a closet, a desk, a TV, and a private bathroom. On the first day, I was introduced to the routine: morning procedures, then light exercises, breakfast, consultations with doctors, lunch, rest time, physical therapy, dinner, evening entertainment. Our goal is not only physical recovery, but also emotional well-being, explained Nurse Olivia as she walked me through the center. We have a recreation room with a library, an art room, even a small movie room. That sounds wonderful, I said sincerely. The first few days at the center flew by. I gradually got used to the new regime, got acquainted with the staff and other patients. Many of them, like me, were recovering from heart attacks or surgeries. Some had been here for several weeks and were eager to share their advice and impressions. I became especially close to Philip Holt, a former philosophy professor who had undergone heart surgery a month earlier. He was a tall, thin man in his 70s, with penetrating gray eyes and a soft but expressive voice. We often sat together in the garden after lunch, discussing books, movies, past events. "I hear you're looking for a new place to live," he said one day. "Yes, I'm planning to buy an apartment as soon as I'm well enough to live independently." "I can recommend the Shaker Heights neighborhood," Philip suggested. "It's quiet, lots of greenery, good infrastructure, and there's a great community for seniors, the Silver Time Club. We meet twice a week. We discuss books, go on excursions, organize themed evenings." "Sounds like fun," I smiled. "Do you live there?" "For 10 years now," he nodded. "Ever since I was widowed. It was hard to be alone at first, but then I found this club and life got colorful again." I wondered. Shaker Heights was a nice neighborhood, upscale but not flashy, with parks, cafes, stores within walking distance. And, importantly, far enough away from my old home that I wouldn't accidentally run into Tobias or the kids. When my week in the center had passed, I called the realtor and explained that I was looking for an apartment in this particular neighborhood. Dwight was happy to work with me again. "I have some great options in Shaker Heights," he said. "When can you see them?" "Maybe next week. The doctors say I'm recovering well." "That's great. I'll prepare a selection and send you photos and descriptions so you can pre-select what you're interested in." On the 10th day of my stay in Maple Beach, something happened that I was both expecting and dreading. Tobias called. They had returned from vacation and found strangers living in the house. "Meryl, what's going on?" His voice sounded confused and angry. "We came home and there's some family there. They say they bought the house from you. Is there some kind of mistake?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I'd imagined this conversation dozens of times in the last few days. "It's not a mistake, Tobias. I sold the house." There was a deafening silence. Then he exploded. "You did what? How could you do that? Without my knowledge, without my consent? Where are we going to live now? What about our things?" "All your personal belongings are in the vault," I said calmly. "I sent the address and key to your email. As for the furniture and the rest of the property, it was left in the house as part of the deal." "Are you crazy?" His voice shook with rage. This is a crime. I'll sue you." "The house was mine alone, Tobias," I said firmly. "I inherited it from my parents, remember? By law, I had every right to sell it." "What about me?" Now there was panic in his voice. "Where am I supposed to live?" "That's not my problem," I replied, and without waiting for another wave of indignation, I added, "Goodbye, Tobias." I disconnected the phone and sat for a long time, staring out the window at the garden with the fountain. Strangely, I felt neither guilt nor regret, only relief, as if I'd thrown off a heavy backpack I'd been carrying for years. Soon the calls from the kids followed, first angry, then pleading, then accusing. I answered calmly and firmly. "My decision is final. I am starting a new life, and in this life there is no place for people who left me in the hospital for a beach vacation." "We thought you could handle it," Yoris shouted into the phone. "You said yourself you were fine." "Did it occur to you that I said that because I knew you were going to leave anyway?" I asked. "That I was just saving you the trouble of making excuses?" She had no answer for that. Surprisingly, after these conversations, I felt freer. It was as if the last invisible chains binding me to my past had finally broken. I could fully focus on my recovery and planning for the future. By the end of the second week in the rehabilitation center, I could walk short distances, climb stairs without shortness of breath, and perform simple household tasks. The doctors noted good recovery dynamics. "Keep up the good work, Mrs. Bland." Dr. Reeves smiled at the next checkup. "And soon you will be able to return to a full life. With some restrictions, of course, and under the supervision of a cardiologist." On the 15th day of my stay at the center, Dwight arrived to take me to the apartment viewing. I'd chosen 3 of his options, and now I wanted to see them in person. The first apartment was too dark, with windows that looked out onto a noisy street. The second was more spacious, but it was on the 4th floor of a building without an elevator. Not the best option for someone with heart problems. But the third conquered me from the threshold. A bright 2-room apartment on the 2nd floor of a small brick house. Large windows looked out into a well-maintained yard with maple trees and benches. The living room had access to a small balcony. The kitchen was compact but functional, with new appliances. The bathroom was spacious and comfortable. The house was built in the 50s, but it's recently been completely renovated, Dwight told me as he showed me the apartment. It's got new utilities, good soundproofing. There are only 6 apartments in the entrance, and the neighbors are mostly elderly people or couples without children. Quiet, peaceful. "I like it," I said, standing in the middle of the living room and imagining how I would arrange the furniture, what curtains I would hang, where I would put the bookshelves. "I want to buy it." "Good choice." Dwight was delighted. "The price is reasonable, especially considering the neighborhood and the condition of the apartment. The owner is out of the country, so there's no problem with the transaction." That same day, we drew up a preliminary contract of sale. Dwight promised to finalize it within a week. "By the time you're discharged from the center, the apartment will be ready," he assured me. "I can even arrange for the delivery of basic furniture and essentials if you'd like." I gratefully accepted his offer. The thought of setting up the apartment on my own right after I was discharged was a little scary. The last week in the rehabilitation center flew by. I continued to work out, getting stronger day by day. In the evenings, I often sat in the garden with Philippe, discussing my plans for my new life. "You've done a very brave thing, Meryl," he said one day. "Not many people make such a change at our age." "Sometimes I think I'm crazy," I confessed. "Giving it all up, starting over." "That's not madness," Philip shook his head. "It's courage. It takes real courage to admit that your life is not happy and to find the strength to change it." The day I was discharged from the rehab center, almost everyone I had become friends with over the weeks came to see me off. The nurse Olivia, the physical therapy instructor Marcus, the patients with whom we had worked out and had dinner together. Philip gave me a book of poems by his favorite poet with a touching inscription, "Meryl," who showed me that new chapters can be started at any age. Dwight came to pick me up in his car. He informed me that the apartment was all set. The deal was done. The basic furniture and necessities had been delivered and arranged according to my instructions. "All that's left is to move you and your personal belongings," he smiled. The drive to the new house took about 20 minutes. The whole time I stared out the window at the fall Cleveland skyline, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and peace. A new chapter of my life was starting right now. The apartment looked even better than I remembered. Bright, spacious, and filled with evening sunshine. Dwight hadn't been fooled. Everything was ready for my arrival. The living room had a couch and 2 armchairs, a coffee table, and a small bookcase. In the bedroom, a bed with a new orthopedic mattress and a bedside table. In the kitchen, table, chairs, dishes, kettle, microwave. "I even bought groceries from your list," Dwight said, opening the refrigerator. "So you wouldn't have to run straight to the store." I was touched by his concern. "Thank you for everything," I said sincerely. "You've done so much more than was necessary." "It was a pleasure," he smiled. "It's not every day you help someone start a new life." When Dwight left, I walked around the apartment slowly, getting used to the idea that this was my home now. There was nothing of my old life here, no pictures, no memorabilia, no gifts from my husband and children. a blank slate on which I could write a new story. I opened the door to the balcony and stepped out into the cool fall evening. Downstairs in the courtyard, an elderly couple was leisurely strolling along the path among the maples. The man was saying something. The woman was laughing. They were holding hands, simply and naturally, like people who are comfortable with each other. At that moment, my phone rang. The number was unidentifiable, but I knew it was someone in the family. Probably Tobias, maybe Garth or Joris. They'd called every day since they'd discovered the house for sale. First with anger, then pleas, then threats. I'd stopped taking their calls a week ago. I stared at the blinking screen of my phone and felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, no gloating. It was as if that part of my life was truly a thing of the past. I dismissed the call and went back into the apartment. I made tea, turned on the floor lamp, sat in the armchair with the book Philip had given me. It was getting dark outside the window. Cleveland was turning on the evening lights, and I felt at home for the first time in years. A real home. A place where I was valued and respected, even if that someone was me. I'd only been in my new apartment for 2 days when they found me. The doorbell rang insistently, and through the peephole I saw them all. Tobias, Garth and Winifred, Joris and Edric. Their faces were tense, angry. For a moment I considered not opening it. Just pretend I wasn't home. But that would be cowardly. Sooner or later this conversation was going to happen. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Mom!" Joris exclaimed, pushing her way into the apartment first. "Finally! We've been looking all over for you." The others followed her without waiting for an invitation. They looked around with ill-concealed surprise and disapproval. "How did you find me?" I asked calmly, closing the door. "Your realtor," Tobias answered angrily. "We found his card in the storage room where you'd put our stuff. We pressed him and he cracked. Poor Dwight. I wonder what kind of threats they had to make to get him to give up my address." "What is this all about, Meryl?" Tobias suddenly pounded his fist on the table, making me wince. "You sold our house, threw away our stuff, disappeared. Do you have any idea what we've been through? We came back from vacation and found strangers in our house," picked up Joris, her voice breaking into a scream. "We had to spend the night in a hotel. How could you, Mom?" "First of all, it was my house," I corrected calmly, though my heart was racing. I'd inherited it from my parents, and it had always been in my name. Secondly, I didn't throw anyone out. All of your belongings are neatly stacked in the vault. "I don't care about the papers," Tobias exploded. 42 years I've lived in this house. 42 years it was my home. And you sold it behind my back while I was away. While you were vacationing in the Bahamas, leaving me alone in the hospital after a heart attack, I clarified, still calm. "You said we could go," Garth shouted, his face flushed with anger. "You lied to us, manipulated us." Winifred, who was standing next to him, hissed angrily. "Do you realize what you've done? We're missing family heirlooms, photo albums, documents." "Nothing is missing," I objected. "As I said, all your personal belongings are in the vault." I emailed the keys and address to Tobias. "This is outrageous." Edric stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. "Do you realize that this is against the law? You had no right to dispose of community property." "It wasn't community property," I replied firmly. "The house belonged to me." "We're going to sue," Edric threatened. "We'll prove that you were incapacitated. After the heart attack, under the influence of medication." "Please," I shrugged. "Waste of time and money. All my documents are in order. The doctors will confirm my sanity." "You've ruined the family," screamed Joris, tears streaming down her face. "You betrayed us all. For what? To sit in this miserable apartment?" "I didn't betray anyone," I argued. "I just decided to finally live for myself." Tobias grabbed the vase off the table and threw it against the wall. Shards flew across the floor. "For yourself?" he roared. 42 years I've provided for you, taken care of you, and you repay me like this?" I flinched, but I didn't back down. "Taken care of?" My voice remained calm. "When I went into the hospital with a heart attack, your first thought was not to cancel my vacation. Is that what caring looks like? Don't you dare twist the facts." Tobias came right up to me, hovering over me. "You deliberately led us to believe that you were fine, while you were planning this sabotage." You don't care that I almost died, I said, looking him in the eye. All you care about is that you have nowhere to go back from the resort. I'll strangle you with my own hands if you don't get the house back, Tobias shouted, his face contorted with rage. Dad! Garth pulled him away from me. Calm down! This isn't helping! What is? Tobias wouldn't stop. That woman! This woman ruined my life! Where am I gonna live? What am I gonna do? You could start by treating your wife like a person, not a servant, I said. Winifred gave a contemptuous laugh. Oh, that's what this is all about. You've been reading all that feminist nonsense. Have you decided to become an independent woman in your old age? I'm 67, not 97, I objected. I still have time to live my own life. You're out of your mind, Garth shook his head. The heart attack had taken its toll on your brain. No, Garth, I said calmly. For the first time in a long time, I'm thinking clearly, and I realize that I deserve better than to be someone's convenient mother and wife. We'll go to the lawyers, Edric said. We'll prove that the deal was illegal. You'll pay the buyers back, and we'll take the house back. I'll get the best lawyers in Cleveland, Tobias said. I'll get the best lawyers in Cleveland. I'm going to get you Merrill. The money's already spent, I said. Some of it went to the rehab center, some to this apartment. I invested the rest. You invested it? Tobias looked like he was about to have a stroke. Invested where? It's none of your business, I said calmly. You fucking bitch. He came at me again, but Garth held him back. You planned the whole thing. You thought of everything. Dad, stop. Garth had a hard time pulling him aside. Let's think this through, if the money's already been spent. No, Tobias wouldn't stop. She'll pay it all back. She'll cancel the deal. I'm not canceling anything, I said firmly. My decision is final. I've started a new life, and you have to accept it. We will destroy you, Joris hissed. We'll tell everyone we know what a cruel, selfish person you are. Tell them, I shrugged. I have new acquaintances now. You'll regret this, Tobias promised, his voice shaking with rage. I swear you're going to regret it. Look, I sighed, feeling tired from this barrage of emotions. I don't hate you. It's just that it's time for everyone to live their own lives. You have your homes, your jobs, your plans. I have one now. So what? You're just going to cut us out? Garth asked. And for the first time, I heard not only anger but pain in his voice. 42 years of marriage, 35 years of motherhood, and that's it? I'm not erasing the past. I shook my head. It will stay with me, but I'm choosing a different future. Without us, Joris said bitterly. That's up to you, I said. If you can accept me as I am now, a woman with her own wants and needs, not just a convenient grandmother and wife, then we can build a new relationship. If not, I didn't finish my sentence, but everyone understood the meaning behind the if not. Tobias gave me a hateful look. You're going to die alone in this apartment, he hissed, and no one will come to your funeral. If that's the case, it'll be my choice, I replied calmly. He grabbed a framed picture of me from the table, the only thing I'd taken from the old house, and smashed it to the floor. That's what I think of your choice. Please leave, I said, feeling my composure wearing off. Now. Oh, we'll go. Tobias headed for the door. But this isn't over, Merrill. You'll regret what you did. Garth and Winifred followed him. Joris lingered. Mother. Her voice was a mixture of anger and pleading. It's not too late to make things right. Come back to us. We can help you. Find good doctors. There's nothing wrong with me, Joris, I said firmly. I just don't want to live the way I used to. You'll break your father's heart. My heart is already broken, I said quietly, and neither of you even noticed. She shook her head, tears of anger and resentment in her eyes. You're going to regret this, Mom. When the euphoria of freedom wears off, you'll be alone, all alone. Maybe, I agreed, but it will be my choice and my responsibility. When the door closed behind them, I sank slowly into the chair, feeling my knees shake. Only now that they were gone did I let myself feel all the fear and tension I'd been holding back during the confrontation. I looked at the broken vase, at the shards of the picture frame. Tobias had always had a temper, but never before had he allowed himself such a public display of anger. Maybe he was genuinely hurting. Maybe in his mind he even loved me. But that didn't change my mind. I gathered up the shards, wiped the floor, made tea. Gradually, the trembling in my hands subsided. I didn't regret opening the door to them. This hard conversation was necessary, like a last agonizing tug, pulling out a stuck splinter. I sat at the window, looking out at fall Cleveland. The maples in the yard burned red and gold, the last warm days of the year giving a farewell caress. Tomorrow I'll go for a walk, meet my neighbors, maybe check out that book club Philip talked about. Tomorrow my real new life would begin. 3 months later, it was winter in Cleveland, and it was snowy, but not too cold. Large snowflakes were falling outside my apartment window, turning the courtyard into a fairy tale kingdom. I sat in my favorite chair, wrapped in a blanket, and reread the letter from Delilah. So glad you found your way, Meryl. Your stories of your new life inspire me every time. I can't wait to see you in March. Florida will be beautiful this time of year. I smiled as I envisioned our trip to Florida, the little adventure Delilah and I had planned for early spring. A week on the coast, sightseeing, long conversations on the beach, our first real trip in years. My thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. Philip stood on the doorstep with a box of cookies and the new detective novel we were about to discuss. Ready for the club meeting? He smiled. More than ready, I replied, letting him into the apartment. Silver time was exactly what I needed. We met twice a week at the local library to discuss books, plan excursions, and sometimes just share news. I met a dozen interesting people around my age, all with different experiences, stories, and views on life. Some of them became real friends. Philip and I became especially close. No, not romantically. Just two kindred souls who found understanding and support in each other. We often went together to concerts, to museums, sometimes just walking in the park, discussing philosophical questions or the latest news. He made tea, and I put cookies on a plate. We settled down in the living room, ready for a long conversation about the book we'd read. "How's your heart?" Philip asked, noticing that I was rubbing my chest. "Better every day," I smiled. "The doctor says the recovery is going well. You just need to watch your blood pressure and don't skip your medications." "What about the other thing?" he asked cautiously. Philip knew the whole story of my separation from my family. Silence, I shrugged. Joris sent a card for Christmas, a formal one, no return address. Nothing from Tobias or Garth. "Do you miss them?" I wondered. Did I miss them? Sometimes at night I felt a strange longing not for the past few years, but for the distant past. Young Joris, who used to bring me her school drawings, for little Garth, who fell asleep in my arms, even Tobias, the way he was when he was young, enthusiastic, attentive. "I miss the things that are gone," I finally answered. "I miss the past that I can't get back, but not what our relationship had become." Philip nodded understandingly. "Do you know what helped me after Eleanor's death?" he said. "Realizing that love and pain are not the same thing. You can love people even if they hurt you, and you can let go of pain without giving up on love." His words made me think. Maybe that was the key. To love them, from afar, in my own way, without expectations, without demands, but also without bitterness. "We'll see what time brings," I said, sipping my tea. "In the meantime, I have a new life, new friends, new plans. And you know what? I'm happy, Philip, for the first time in years, really happy." He smiled and raised his cup as if making a toast. "To new beginnings, Meryl, and to the courage to follow your heart, even if it's not an easy path." We clinked cups, and I thought about how strange life is. Sometimes it takes breaking an old vessel to create a new one. Sometimes you have to lose something familiar to gain something priceless. The snow continued to fall outside the window, covering Cleveland with a white blanket. Ahead was the second half of winter, then spring, summer. A lifetime full of possibilities. My life. Finally, really mine.